think just about everybody's here. All right, I believe everybody's here. Gil, do you want to gavel us in?
I didn't do that yesterday.
I know, but let's do it for pretend today. There we go. A thorough job as always. Thank you, Gil. Do you have any remarks before we get started? I just thought I'd ask.
Let's have a productive meeting.
Great. So I just want to remind everybody of our rules for the day. It's going to be the exact same thing we did yesterday. I want to ask you to place your phones, pagers, if you have them, on silent or vibrate. Let's try to keep them in our pockets or face down on the table if we can so that we can be presently here and paying attention to everything that's going on. Make sure that you give everybody a chance to say their piece and pay attention to what everyone has to say. And let's see, keep to our agenda timeline, and please make sure that you state your name and affiliation when speaking. Please make sure you make your comments into a microphone, and please remember that side conversations do get recorded, and we do listen to them in the office, and sometimes we chuckle. Are there any questions about our rules for the day? No? All right, so let's cover our agenda. First up, we're going to have Lee Moody, Carol Berry, and Dave Holland give you presentations on recruitment and retention from the perspective of the three major organizations on site. After that, Brian Hennessy will be in to give you an update on the final approved FFA Appendix C. We'll break for lunch. We'll come back. Maxine will come up and give you a presentation on the spent fuel, nuclear fuel disposition strategy. Then John Lopez will come up and talk about the DOE SR budget and the process. We'll take a short break. Sonny will come up and talk about the liquid waste FY19 President's budget. Then natural resources management. We'll have public comments and then move into voting. Any questions on our agenda for the day? None? You're late, you missed it. You'll have to read it. Sorry, Dawn. All right, so with that, Lee, let's get you started.
Testing. Good morning, SRS CAB members, DOE, federal employees, and to the guests and community that attended today's CAB meeting. My name is Lee Moody. I'm the Senior HRBP for Savannah River Human Resource Advisory Office. Our name changed about 2 years ago, part of our transition. The data you will see here is data from the end of April as I recorded this presentation. I'm going to just talk a little bit about our demographics and our recruitment and challenges and strategies that we have came up with and how we're working. So as far as everyone know, with the current administration, their purpose was to kind of downsize the federal agencies and governments and so forth. So DOE has not been a stranger to that. As we go through, you'll see some of the differences over the course of many, many years, including this fiscal year as well. So DOE-SR results from the fiscal year 18 workforce analysis, and as I said, I updated this as well just back in April. We have a total workforce of 232 federal employees. That's full-time federal employees. Our FTE ceiling, which is our manpower ceiling, is 249. While I'm not going to go over budget, that'll be done by someone else. We're looking at trying to staff above that, managing our budget at about 258 FTEs. Currently, right now, 68% of SR employees are 50 years or older, compared to 11% under 40 years. Comparing results with federal government and DOE, SR has the highest concentration of employees from 50 to 59 years of age range. And you'll see some graphics on a couple other pages and charts as well. 48% of SR workforce has 20 or more years of federal service, making it a highly experienced workforce and qualified. In comparison, 40% of DOE employees and 38% of federal employees have 20 or more years. So we're definitely higher in that category as well. 49% of SR workforce is at GS-14 level and above, meaning they have superior quals and experience, and they have a voice in what goes on with the different actions and work activities at Savannah River. 24% of SR populations are currently eligible for regular retirement, and that's pretty steady from what we had over the last couple of years. Additionally, 18% are eligible for early retirement with VERA, which is Volunteer Early Retirement Authority, which is an early out if you qualify on a certain program in fiscal year 2018. And that stat is very important as I go through this presentation. A total of 42% could be eligible to leave if we have the VERA authority, could leave this year if they desire so. This is DOESR job summary at Savannah River. This is how the 232 people break down in our different percentile. Of course, we always concerned with our general engineer, physical scientist, nuclear engineer, and those are some of the big important occupation series that's important to us on the site, concerning most of the concentration work is dealing with overview of contractor working for those technology areas and technical areas. SR workforce by age and range. Once again, as I was stating early, SR is in the blue. We're at, I think that's 11% under 40, 21% at 40 to 49, and 50 to 59, our highest concentration compared to DOE. The rest of DOE and federal government is at 47%. And then also 60 and over. We did do some improvements under 40. Last 2 years, we've been at about 9%, and so we rose to 11%. We do have a plan for that as well. As I talk more about some of our strategies, what we're looking to do, I'll discuss that as well. Retirement demographics, as I stated earlier, 98 are eligible employees today for regular retirement, and within the 5 years, 124. And while we do +5, normally once an individual in the federal government reach retirement, 5 years, they do tend to stay, average being 5 years or more, they'll stay after their regular retirement eligibility. This is a retirement demographics chart. So as we go by series, we look at how the breakdown is. Of course, once again, we're concerned with our general engineer, physical scientist, nuclear engineering, and we take a look at that and determine, where we would need to do succession planning to ensure we have a good, qualified, and capable workforce. Also, as you'll see on here, which is a good thing, information technology, which is really becoming big due to cybersecurity and so forth. We have no one eligible to be retired within the next 5 to 15 years on that, because we just hired a new group of individuals coming into the 2210 series. This is our SR losses and gains summary, and this chart here is very telling, kind of just to give you an overview. Starting at 2009, our FTE cylinder count was 348. So compared to now, even last year was at 250. Right now, it's still pending. I kept pending on there, but it's 232 as we speak. So as you can see, our overall budget requirements and FTE requirements have gone down due to the downsizing of federal government. But one of the biggest things we make sure we keep track of is our losses and gains and how that's working. It's no secret that based on our losses for this year, 2018, 2017, it was really important because we had a lot of people was eligible to retire. We knew we was going to have that big number. And this year, even though our number was smaller at 23, most of that was attributed to what we call VSIP, Volunteer Separation Incentive Payment, where the government authorized DOE to use a voluntary early out for those people that are eligible to either retire or separate. And we did have some takers on that as well, and we'll have a chart to go over that. One of the things we look at also is our TQP, which is our Technical Qualification Program. That's the program to bring individuals into the engineering, those series that have technical skills and background that's required. They go through a training process to get qualified and to be able to stop unsafe work, report on different work that's going on, activity that's going on, to describe what kind of any problems they may have and so forth. And so we keep a track of our TQ Technical Qualification Program to ensure we keep a good balance. We lost 15 in 2018, but we did hire another 8 individuals to replace those. And that's still ongoing, so to try to place those 15s. Here's the status of our Technical Qualification Program as of April. We have a number of capabilities, 208. Number of capability staff on board is 144. We have 12 individuals going through the program, so we're looking at a staffing shortfall of about 54 at the time, which we just received about 5 individuals 2 weeks ago, so that number will go up. So right now we're averaging about 74% of our capabilities of staff or TQP on board, not counting the individuals that are going through qualifications. SR attrition rate. This is, once again, as I was saying earlier about the retirement. So we average about anywhere from 8 to 9% retirement annually, 9.7 for the last couple of years. That's about 20 plus employees per year that we lose through some type of attrition. Attrition can be attributed to retirement. Once again, as I was talking about the VSEP, the Volunteer Separation Incentive Program, we did identify 27 positions, not individuals, that we could offer to, and we only used about 7, which was pretty significant. We didn't have a lot of takers, so more people did stick around and stay with DOE Savannah River. In non-retirement, we did have a 3% loss, and most of those are individuals getting promotions or other jobs within DOE or other federal agencies. So our attrition rate for 2018 was 10%. This is our Mission Critical Occupation Series. These are the series that are identified by OPM, which is Office of Personnel Management, DOE Headquarters, and then DOE Savannah River. And as you see, we identify those positions for Savannah River General Engineer, Physical Scientist, and include the Facility Representative Occupation Series, Fire Protection Engineer, Nuclear Engineer, which is a Nuclear and Critical Safety Specialists, and Facility Engineers as well. With DOE Headquarters, they have some of the same things as well that we identify, and then with OPM, they also look at contract specialists and information technology. Next slide. So what we're looking at as far as our human resource challenges due to the President memorandum regarding the hiring freeze and workforce reshaping. All EM sites were under temporary hiring pause. We came out of that pause. Now we must obtain several approvals, including from the Secretary of Energy office, to recruit for those positions. It doesn't matter if it's a nuclear safety type position or if a budget or administration type position. All positions must go through a process of being approved by management in order for us to recruit. And we, as senior management team, along with myself, we identified those positions that we are most needed and critical, and then we discussed that and we sent a package up through the EM program office all the way up to the Secretary's office. Our aging workforce, another challenge on that, our average age is 53. We were at 56, so that's came down some. So we definitely keeping a track on that. And our goal is to hire young talent. Matter of fact, we just had an announcement out on the streets in April throughout DOE. It was a DOE-wide effort to recruit through the career pathways, where we recruit college students graduating within the last 2 years. And it doesn't matter if they graduate for associates, bachelors, masters, or doctors. Within the last 2 years, they can qualify and apply for the program. Retirement eligibility with VERA, as I mentioned earlier, is 42%. We're going to utilize recruitment tools and programs to attract young talent, and we do go out to some of the job fairs and career fairs throughout the United States for most of the colleges. Training opportunities, we bring in additional training on site to cut down with that budget process as well. That was another program that was hit pretty hard with the reduction of FTEs. We bring in a lot of NTC, which is National Training Center, classes on board to Savannah River to provide those training, not only for the federal staff, but also our contractor counterparts as well. Some of the other human resource strategies are recruitment and retention strategies. We utilize incentive programs to recruit and retain mission critical occupation positions. And so we do offer a recruitment or retention or relocation incentive to employees that is willing to come to Savannah River and work, that are highly qualified. We continue to recruit under the Career Pathways Program, the recent grads, as I was mentioning earlier. Also, we're utilizing support service contractors when possible. So due to the FTE ceiling decreased amount, we will go out and look at support service contractors that we can hire to come into those positions. And we have been pretty aggressive that with our administrative processes, positions that we have. We created and implemented an aggressive succession plan. We conduct an annual career review with employees. We anticipate future gaps in critical areas and be proactive in those recruitment of those areas, especially in those one-for-one type positions we may have, whether it's an aviation type position or if it's two facility engineers and so forth. We look at those positions where we have a smaller number of staff and people in those positions, and we look at and be proactive, try to get ahead of that before they retire. Also, part of retirement, we look at knowledge transfer and training opportunities. We continue to increase brown bag training, where we have individuals come in with depth of knowledge and experience of the site, especially those individuals with 20, 30, 40 years on the site. They come in and do brown bag trainings, and we record those for individuals. So if somebody do happen to leave in a specific area and they don't get a chance to talk to the replacement, at least they have videos and trainings of some of the experiences they dealt with over the years. We continue to work with NTC to procure more training courses on site to reduce the cost of traveling. And DOE is conducting, for the first time in about 6 years, a department-wide training needs assessment this year. They already sent out the memorandum to conduct this DOE-wide and what type of information we're looking to gain and report back on. So that concludes my presentation for today. I don't know if we have time for questions or...
I think what we'll do is so that everybody gets a good handle on all three processes. We'll let Carol and then Dave Holland go first, and then we'll do questions as a group, kind of like what we did last year.
Wonderful. Thank you. Great.
Good morning, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity for the third year to give you the status of where we are with SRNS and our hiring. This is an infographic that we keep up to date that gives you the status. We ground it at FY14 because that's where we began our hiring efforts, and since that time, and all my data, like Lee's, is as of the end of April. So we've hired 2,056 full-service employees. 80% remain coming from the local area, and that's a strategy when I was put in this position that I felt was important. I think people, when we find some of our current college grads that we hire from other areas, when we do lose them, the number one reason is because they want to get closer to home. So understanding that, you've got to work with that, and a lot of what we're doing in the successive years is what we've learned from each year, that we've tried something else. We continue to reduce the attrition of our non-retirement eligible personnel. And I think that's just a cumulative effort. A lot of it you can't figure out, but some of it is just we haven't had disruptions in terms of workforce restructuring or years where we had a salary freeze. I think people are understanding that. And plus, there's a dynamic amount of work and quality of work to be done at the site, which is exciting, and it does attract people to wanting to come to work there. We continue to do excellent in our veteran hiring. It's a goal every year for me to try to exceed what we did in the prior year. But of course, we ground off of what the OFCCP sets each year. Last year was 6.7%, and we hired 11.2. I'll talk a little bit about something we did that was unique, and it's continued to help us to attract veteran hires. And our average age continues to go down. It was a high mark of 54 in 2008. And we're down to 48. And I think in the next 2 years, we'll see that go down a little bit faster than it has. One of the things I'll talk about in 16, we embarked on doing a value stream analysis on our hiring process, and with a goal to reduce the amount of time it took to hire someone. It was 120 days originally, which is horrible, but that's because we hadn't done it in so long. We were rusty. We didn't know what to do. and we've reduced that now by 80 days. And it hovers around 40 days on a regular basis. It can go up or down depending on the number of positions, like a non-exempt position, like when we're hiring operators, you get so many applicants. It takes a great deal of time for managers to go through those. So sometimes we can get up to 44 has been a high mark, but we keep that, and we're very proud of that, and that has helped us considerably. We get great feedback from employees at how quick that process goes. And then this chart, the anticipated hiring chart, was something we put together in 14. We keep what our forecast numbers were. So this year we forecast to hire 440. We're a little bit slower to hire this year. We were waiting to see what our budget would be. You'll see on a later slide, we've really kept our hiring on track with our attrition, but you'll also see we're close to that really ticking up. This is a chart we started using that really, instead of tracking by age, we're tracking by generation. So it's interesting to note we have 5 generations represented in our SRS workforce, all the way from the I generation. I think we have 7 or 9 employees, which means they're 22 or younger. And then in the traditionalists, which are birth dates from 45 or less. And we actually have 22 people in that generation. What's interesting to note on this chart is, of course, baby boomer is still the predominant number of folks, but millennial is now, we have more millennials in our workforce than in the Gen X. And I think that we're trying to get more folks in that age range because you don't want to set up a situation where we are today where everyone's worried about a retirement cliff. You want to really have all ages and experience levels represented in your workforce. But you can see we're making great progress there. The blue line represents where we were at the end of the fiscal year 13. So good progress there. I think we're going to continue to see people drop off. So where are we today for this fiscal year? So we've hired 195, and our average age, and this has stayed steady for the last 3 years, is 38. So I know people say to me, well, all you're looking for is the young people. No, we're not. In fact, some of our greatest challenges are finding mid-career professionals, and I'll talk a little bit later about some of the things we're doing there. But we're obviously doing a good job because half of what we hire is older than 38 and half is younger, and that's where we want to be. Our acceptance rates are very high, as you can see. We do very well with that. A couple of things I think that have helped with that, feedback we get from employees, is we do have a benefits calculator that we send with our offers that allows people to take a look at what their total compensation value is based on our offer. Folks like that. In fact, we had a really neat comment from someone who said, I am such a geek and this really fed me. I loved it. So it's fun. Different things that work. We've got 56 future report to works. Most of those are in the engineering disciplines. And what's really exciting right now is the number of non-exempt postings that we either have out now or we anticipate coming out. And normally those numbers increase. So right now we have 133, and it covers from tritium and EM production operators to RADCON inspectors. We're seating a full class of RADCON inspectors, and then some other just onesie-twosies. And as you can see, we have a number of postings in various stages and a very robust summer internship program. Actually, I was just told I am up over 160 positions right now, which is a remarkable increase and has also been very valuable to our hiring efforts. Because just last year, we were able to start allowing managers to make offers to employees, to interns as they headed off to their senior year. So it's pretty fun to go back to school and already know where you're going to work. So with the folks who are leaving us, the average age is 56, so obviously it is the primary reason for attrition is retirement, 5%. We have about 7% total attrition, still remains very low, but 5% of that is due to retirement. And so through April in this fiscal year, we've had 136 retirements. This is actually a little bit higher than last year, so when we project that out, extrapolate that number, it will be similar to the number we saw in 2016. So last year we saw the dip down. There's a lot of ways you can surmise what that was, I think because people maybe thought, well, I'll stay till the end of the contract. Now they realize that's a little bit further out, so you're seeing a little bit more retirement. You know, it's hard to decide what human behavior is in this, but really what you're seeing, and that's why when people talk about the retirement cliff, I just don't see it really being there, because what you're seeing is really a steady leaving, which is very healthy for the workforce, because with the rate that we're able to hire, you've naturally got a lot of overlap and a lot of knowledge exchange, which is very helpful. So another infographic is one of the major things we look at, and one of my focus areas in the next year is really looking at education outreach and expanding what we do every year, and it's the way we prepare the pipeline. So since 2016, we've reached over 40,000 students and teachers. As I mentioned, we've seen also since 14, 100% increase in our internship program. That's been very exciting. We do a number of things with these students when they come. They have meet and greets. They have opportunities to meet with the executives. We get them engaged with our early career organization, LEAP, and really get them interested in coming to work with us. The furthest away we've got, last year we had students from the University of Puerto Rico. We have that student returning along with a few others. She had such a good experience, she recommended to others. And we remain having a number of partnerships with the local universities and tech schools. Those are very valuable to us. We've been in meetings recently with the University of South Carolina about a certificate program we want to add in industrial hygiene. So this has been, again, in line with hiring locally, trying to get more and more programs at the schools in our region that help, and they don't really just feed us, they feed a lot of industries in the area. And SRNS continues to make a considerable contribution to higher education. Two areas that I focus here. Last year was the first time in internships that we had included non-exempt positions. We started fairly small. We had 8 maintenance mechanics, and that was really well received. That's something we found a little bit more when we're doing some of the tours with the students. We've got students that say, well, I'm not really just interested in scientist jobs or engineering jobs. I want to know more about these hands-on jobs. We had a young woman that wanted to know more about welding opportunities. So we've expanded the program. So this year we're going to have 6 RADCON inspector interns and 11 maintenance mechanics. And I think I just heard there might be 2 more added to that. So also, we have been in conversation for the better part of a year. Setting up something new is difficult, with the Apprenticeship Carolina program to have, because we were seeing difficulty in attracting people, particularly minorities, to work in our E&I mechanic positions. So there's certainly plenty of talent out there. We think it's a lack of understanding of what the opportunities are. I went to a program for the state chamber, and I saw some students there that had participated in this type of a program, and we started conversations. We're very close. We've been in conversations with DOE, and we're about to send over a letter so that we can begin doing that. I think it's a great opportunity, and hopefully something we can expand on for this area. So improvements in staffing. I mentioned the value stream analysis that began in 2016. We have a considerable the amount of cost savings, and it's soft dollar, primarily it's time related, but we have some hard dollar savings that I can mention. That began in 16, and we just closed this effort. We're still tracking our numbers. We have a couple items to complete, but they're not things that really I can make happen. I think they'll probably happen, though, in the next year to 18 months. We have a temporary one-stop shop set up. What we did previously when folks were hired, they had to do the GET training in Jackson, and that wasn't a very nice location. That was what the first day was, and the second day then they had to come to A area for badging, go out to N area for medical, and then come back to B area for orientation. It created confusion, people got lost, it was a big waste of time. It takes 1 day now. We have the GET training happens in the Ellington room. We're a little bit, and that's why it's temporary, it's a little bit space issue. In the summer, we've got a challenge this month, onboarding so many interns, but it's working well. And in that same location, because it's so close in proximity to the badge office, we're able to badge folks. And now another change that was approved is for new hires, they do the oral swab for the drug and alcohol testing. So for the drug testing. So that's been a huge improvement. You can get a lot more finished in a smaller amount of space. Another change, so we upgraded our online talent acquisition suite. We've upgraded in the last year, and that's been a big improvement in and of itself, but also we've added 2 items to that where new hires can complete their forms online. So they don't have to drag a lot of forms with them. They're able to get questions answered. You know, there's a lot of things when you fill out that forms that you may need to refer to documents you have at home. So they're able to complete that online. And also we've got all the orientation, which really saves time, done so it's done via video streaming. So we still allow opportunities for them to talk and ask questions if they have anything, but it has reduced by 1 day the time it takes for us to onboard employees. Another exciting first-time thing we did is we conducted what, we tried to call it a lot of different things, but the original name stuck, a reverse career fair. And again, this is trying to get the word out to area college career counselors what jobs we've got. So what we did is we brought a number of folks on site, and different departments in SRS set up booths to show what their needs were. We had a lot of neat displays, a lot of opportunity, and it's where we kind of brought out for the first time something that we began, and we're using 360 videos in our recruiting. A little bit of a wow factor. You got to set yourself apart from others, but we got a lot of positives, and I've got one with me if anybody's interested. It's a really fun video. It's got, there's folks kayaking to demonstrate that you're on the line of South Carolina and Georgia, and highlights a lot of the things to do in the area, but it also focuses and highlights on the major areas where we're trying to recruit. It's short, has to be short. Looking right now, we're in development of one for the engineering disciplines, focusing not just on early career, but trying to pull in the mid-career, and we've got a lot of others planned. So this has been a really fun thing. It's been fun for people that already work in this department. They had to learn a whole new technology. And it just, again, people say, well, you can't make everything look different at the site. We try to make renovations and have things look better. So you might as well use the technology that you use in your recent research and development to recruit folks. We've had a lot of positives from that. As I mentioned, we've increased the number of interns, and we've significantly improved that onboarding process. People want to come to work, they want to get to work. And we do focus on targets. We still go to minority-serving institutions for recruitment. We focus on a lot of the veteran programs, and then specific skill areas, fire protection engineers, occupational safety and health, and mid-career engineers. We did fun in Tritium, had some jobs to fill for shift operations managers and FLMs, and those are difficult to bring folks in, looking for folks who could be quickly badged. So we focused on 4 naval bases, 2 in the north, 2 in the south. Had a little bit of a fun internal competition on that to bring folks on site. We put a lot of effort into this, included other areas with us. We brought them on site, we did a tour, a number of folks were engaged, higher level managers, in meeting with these individuals. We then took them to the SRS Museum in Aiken and had a reception, and that was a very successful recruiting event. Of the 20 we invited, I think we ended up hiring 12 or 13, and what's resulted from that is a number of their friends are now applying for our jobs, and that's very helpful. So again, as I've said in the time I've been in this job, it's a lot of little different things that you have to try to do. We got amazing thank you notes back from those folks saying they had never been treated with such respect, and it was an honor for them to come and visit with us, and they hoped they would receive an offer. So it was tremendously successful. And again, we have a high presence. We're in 31 colleges and universities at their career fairs in 9 different states this year. Just a couple things, as I mentioned, a couple of what I really want to focus on in the next year or so is on this education outreach and developing the talent that we've hired. We have very popular resume writing and interviewing skill workshops, very heavily attended. We can't have enough of them. We have something we call mentoring circles, where maximum of about 10 to 12 individuals, and typically they're from across the site, meet on a monthly basis for about a year, and with a senior executive or a high-level manager. Some areas have found them, they like them so much they're doing them specific to their area, but I think for ones I've been involved in, people enjoy the opportunity to meet people from across the site because it's so large. Having a mixed group is very positive. And because we've got an individual from SRS working with the Promise Zone as a loaned executive, she engaged us, and we had a very good day. I wish more had attended, so hopefully when we do another one, but working with residents, in this particular case we're in Barnwell, and just teaching really, again, resume writing, giving some feedback on their resumes, and teaching some interview skills. I think we'll definitely go back. The folks that I had there just loved the experience, and hopefully they'll tell others so that they'll attend. On education outreach, this week we've got our mini grants program, and we will be awarding over $500,000 to teachers in the CSRA. One thing we're seeing an increase in, and again it goes hand in hand with that reverse career fair we did, is more and more teachers want to come and tour the site. They want to see what's out there, what are the opportunities, and that helps us get the word out. I think we keep the folks that manage the tours very, very busy, but it's been a very big positive, and we've had a request recently for another one of those. Most of those are targeted. We have like the AP math and science teachers, but as I said, at one of the ones where we had some students come out looking in those types of areas, one of the young ladies mentioned, I'd like to know more about welding. She's a top student in science, but that's what she was interested in. So we were able to put together what we called a tour of trades, and that's a smart thing to do too, trying to get people to understand that you don't have to go to a four-year college and get that degree, that there's a lot of good positions at the site with a certificate or a two-year degree. And we just had that in the last couple of weeks, and it was well received. And I've listed below a number of the programs that we do every year. It's a very busy program, but this year I think particularly what I saw is we've hired so many engineers that are new. They have really enjoyed participating in like the engineering teach-ins, Introduce a Girl to Engineering. We never have to worry about volunteers to help with these programs. Compelling Place to Work initiatives, those continue. I think I talked about those for the first time last year. Most of those really help to make the site look better, and that's a positive for people. One of the biggest changes really is the completion of the site entrance in the badge office. If you haven't been there recently, you'll be surprised. I don't go up there often, so the last time I went up, it really did take my breath away. It looked much better. And that's important when you have visitors and when you're bringing people new to the site so that the area looks up to date and fresh. The cafeteria, phase 2 of the cafeteria out in 766H is ongoing. The first one more had to do with the food prep area. This one is more of the appearance. I need to get out there to see it. I hear it's wonderful. And we've increased the number of food trucks. We now have 9 locations. Folks are really liking that way of food delivery. More wellness rooms, and we actually have the Energy Bean Cafe in 730B. And finally, there have been a lot of things in the last year. We've had a lot of articles to recognize some of the things where we've seen success. Many of these are in the area of education outreach and some of the programs that we sponsor, but it's been a great year. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. Forwards, backwards, laser, forwards.
Okay, good morning. My name is David Holland. I work with Savannah River Remediation, and I'm responsible for administrative services, which encompasses human resources activities for the liquid waste contract. Largely, we're responsible for managing the site's liquid waste mission from managing radioactive waste, liquid waste, the storage in the tanks and the like. Just to start off, just to kind of reflect the activity through the contract inception, you can see that we're at about 2,265 individuals through the first quarter of 2018. That headcount has remained largely static since the beginning of quarter 2, 14. The last time I was speaking to this group, we highlighted a couple of thoughts that we saw in the future, and what the focus was creating this number of people by generation and age, just to get a handle and feel of what are we looking at in terms of the mission of our workforce, our employees at the site. And then we focused on what we thought the projected generation shift would be and start educating our senior management team about what do we need to do to position that for the future. So we projected in terms of the bar chart on the left, some over the next 5 years through 2022, some growth in Generation Z, outsized growth in Generation Y, static in Generation X, and largely a reduction of the baby boomers through that population over the next 5 years. And we also focus on training and development for nuclear safety, and that's actually come to fruition where we are engaging in additional training for our operators and individuals in the workforce. Here's what's happened. We have had rapid growth in Generation Z and Generation Y populations. In terms of percentage, we are ever increasing that number to be expected. And you can see the Generation X, the traditional list, has declined somewhat, and that's to be expected in this. If you look at the chart here, you can kind of see the grid line. We are still pretty consistent where we were a year ago. A little bit of the slide, though, that I see is that we're slowly sliding to the right in terms of age, and that's to be expected. With the change in benefit programs and how people are working longer today than they were maybe a generation ago, I expect to see that trend slide out a little bit more. So when I say that, what we typically had were people who had certain benefit subsidy programs. They would leave anywhere between 60 and 62 or retire at 60 to 62. With the new contract with less subsidy being provided in certain benefit programs, people are working longer, and that's a trend you're going to see over the next 15, 20 years, is that curve will go out. So it is interesting in our workforce, you do have an older population that is productive and engaged. Trending increased adoption of multimodal training approaches. Our training program is making use of video, simulation training, computer-based training, all to try to enhance and influence the operators and individuals within the organization to improve and continue and maintain their skills. We're also looking at virtual reality training and augmented reality training over the next couple of years to help individuals in the particular operational facilities. We have had high turnover, though, and the high turnover is a result of the retiree or the older age population taking that final step and moving on to the next chapter of career in their life. So we do have a little bit of activity. When you think about 10% annual at about a 2,200 count population, you can kind of see we're in the 150 to 200 number in terms of regular employees. Safety, increased emphasis on facility training to account for new operators. The site, or excuse me, our liquid waste mission has embarked on what they call the 4.5 shift, which is an approach to address the fact that we have had a long-serving, long-standing workforce accustomed to how to operate in that particular facility, and now we're bringing in newer people all the time. They don't have those experiences, and so we have found that we need to train them more and provide more training in the areas that they are would need to work. And so examples could be anything from industrial training, radioactive experience training, terms like documented safety analysis, understanding what that means within a particular facility, technical safety requirements, what that means, so people who come in and are unaccustomed to the workforce gain those experiences. We've developed the 4.5 shift. We've had increase in shift staffing to accommodate personnel transition, and it's all disciplines: operators, mechanics, radcon, engineering, And then the other driver for us is SWPF integration. So we're expanding the particular workforce to do that. You can see the highlight. We're anticipating about, we're expecting about 225 retirements over the next 5 years, coupled with less than 2% regular attrition. And what I was trying to convey there was that regular attrition are the people that we've been hiring. So we have a high number in terms of the population that's been there for 20 to 30 years. We have a very low number in the people that we've hired in the last 5 years. And so I think that's a good sign. And so as they know, statistics can be misleading or facts can be misleading at times. But I think we're approaching this in an appropriate manner, and we're taking a bite of the apple, one bite at a time to make sure we manage it. A couple of grids I thought interesting. We're on track. We had, for this inclusion of hiring, schedule 4.5 shift and SWPF integration, and we are on target. Late last summer, we had targeted 154 operators to be hired, along with 100 RADCON inspectors, 28 trainers, 3 engineering, which was related to shift technical engineers, maintenance 83, 360 people to hire for the next 12-month period starting last summer. To date, we're at about 45% completion of that. And in the next 2 weeks, we'll jump up to 75% because we have another cohort of employees being hired. So along with SRS, we are providing opportunities for the CSRA and expand and outer region in a significant scope. A lot of people have come into the site and a lot of new experiences and good experiences for people to be had here at this mission. So I think that's a good story to tell also. This chart right here just reflects the campaign that started. And if you look at that little blue line on each particular blue line, that's the engagement of qualifications for our operators within the facilities. So you can see we have a cohort program that is winding its way through to expand our population to the appropriate size. Just a little employment dashboard, hiring age stats. You can see for our activity over 16, 17, and the first quarter of 18. You can see that we've, the number of people that we hired in the exempt, their average age, those in the non-exempt and the average age. And you can see between the two employment classifications, non-exempt and exempt, we're slight difference. But what that's doing, just as with our other contract on the site, is that we're lowering the average age in the site. And you can see that as time wears on. Over the next 5 years, our average age will continue to drop significantly compared to where it is today. If you look at the bottom left-hand side of the chart, attrition statistics, retirement, it's our big hitter. And then resignations, we also, because we do hire a substantial number of people who are in the baby boomer generation, i.e. it's their second career, they come in for 3 to 5 year assignment, or they've come in from other industry and they have the right experiences for us to work with. So we have a elevated number somewhat of resignations, but that's largely because they're in an older career kind of platform in terms of that their opportunity. So it's not a young person or a younger career individual leaving as much as an individual who's at 62 or 63 in that particular case. And you can see over here on the top right, employees by county and state. Large prevalence of employees reside in Aiken County, with Columbia and Richmond County covering up the second and third most populous county areas. And then hiring activity, this is where the growth is in terms of our activity for just the sheer number of employees for our particular contract. Engineering hires, resignations. We keep this chart up to date just to keep a focused eye on engineering. And what's good is about right here, we're holding on to the engineers that we hire in the area. And that's great for our particular mission and our project. What I think individuals are starting to see, those that are coming into the opportunities that we offer, is they see that bow wave of retirements coming. So the opportunities for individuals over the next 15 years with our mission is they can have a lot of opportunity for growth, professional growth, and challenging assignments at the facility as they replace the workforce that's been there for a number of years. So these engineers that we're hiring, large part we're able to retain for their services. And not unlike SRS, when we tend to go way far and get students from across the nation, it's a higher competitive environment to retain them. Those that are local or familiar with this southern region, if you will, tend to have a more affinity or a better affinity to stay with a particular mission. Our talent acquisition, we use this circle. This is our primary recruiting area in terms of students. We will occasionally recruit from Texas A&M. We will recruit from other schools. It's not excluded, but this tends to be our primary area because the students understand what they're looking at in this particular area. One activity underway that we're trying to enhance our capabilities to recruit and attract individuals, we are revamping the way we acquire talent through our talent acquisition approach. And essentially, we're going to evaluate and place a new applicant tracking system. And why that's important is that Liquid Waste had made use of a parent company recruiting activity profile where it blurred the message of who we were. And because it was involved with the parent company, sometimes we would have to explain to people, well, you're really not joining the parent company, you're joining the Liquid Waste mission here. And so we believe that what we need to do to better hone in and focus our message and allow us to improve our processes is to establish our own applicant tracking system, which will allow us to put our own employment applications online, communicate a little more directly to our participants, and also have systems that support the kind of online engagement that's out there today. We're not able to do that under our current arrangements, so we've decided to put that in, and really it's a liquid waste enhancement as we focus on the next 10 to 15 years to attract people. So this will focus on end user ease of application, liquid waste brand awareness. So again, it's about the liquid waste mission, not so much about the company that's involved. And new portal will focus solely on our activities at Savannah River site. Our strategic approach to college recruiting efforts, we've had emphasis on diversity with increased activities at HBCUs. We've had 24 offers. We've had 18 hires in this particular period. And 2018 intern program, School to Work, we make use of. We've also established or started what we call an entry-level intro interns. These are even younger individuals in their first, who don't have necessarily 1 or 2 years of college in their background, but may only have one. And what we're trying to do is connect with them a little bit earlier so they come out to the site. The site can be intimidating when you're a new participant. Carol had highlighted people got lost going from A to B. Well, as a first-time individual, that's easy to do. It's easy to do unless somebody's shepherding you through the particular area. So the idea with the entry interns is to really get people's feet wet, have them understand it's not this intimidating place that you need to worry about. It's just another, quite frankly, industrial facility, and you'll learn your way around the site. So we're pretty excited about that, and we hope that builds opportunities for those students to come back. And again, it's getting our options with them to feel like they can come back in that particular role. And then we will have college interns for the summer months, and veteran career fair recruiting. We will focus on local transition centers to reasonably attract and recruit individuals. Our summary is simple. We're recruiting and retaining SOR, continues to find ways to make ourselves a more compelling place to work. We, along with what was important to us, we thought that our workforce wanted was an enhanced paid time off offering to reasonably keep people staying at the site, especially our younger career individuals. I used the term one time when working with our counterparty with the client that it's a sticky benefit. And when I was conveying that message and talking, he kind of chuckled. He said, yeah, it is. And my view is anytime we can cause someone to think about, hey, I have these benefits here, and if I go to company B, I'm going to walk away from that. I've won, because I've got them thinking about something they have here at Savannah Riverside. They have their job actualization component, which is the job itself. They like it. And then they look at, hey, what can I get here? And I laugh. I'm sure some of you lived through this. When I started with one of the predecessor companies, I didn't have vacation until I worked a year. And then it was a stingy 1 week. And I think back, and I said, I would have really enjoyed those vacation days. And what we find with the newer workforce is their expectations are different than what my expectations were. And so this was really something that I think will pay dividends long, good value for the money in that particular regard. We had 185 people left since the beginning of 2017. 112 of those were retirements with 50 as resignations. However, we hired 341 people. We are bringing people into the particular operation. Our average age is now 49 compared to 51. And we expect to continue to hiring in liquid waste for the next 5 years across all our disciplines. It's not going to go away. So we're going to see hiring probably 100 to 125, depending upon what the mission is, over the next several years. I can't stress enough to the individuals who do come in, there is exciting opportunities, there's career growth, there's positioning for the future, and it's a great place to be. Thank you.
Thank you. So as Carol and Dave make their way up, as Carol and Lynn make their way up, please keep in mind that there are three separate related presentations here. So if you do have a question, let us know who it is that you're directing the question to. It's all three. Please say that you want this all three to be free, okay? Narendra, let's start with you.
Good morning, Narendra Malik for CAB. I have one question for each individual. About the DOE, you mentioned that there is a 10% rate of attrition. How long it takes to fill those positions and how much it costs to retrain the employees?
Yes, for DOE, 10% attrition per year. So average on right now for the last 2 years for us to hire federal employees, we on an 80-day OPM model, Office of Personnel Management. Our goal is 80 days. DOE SR has been establishing about 72-day model for how it's taking us to recruit backfill those positions. But that's the time we actually post the announcement, go through our hiring process for the year. For us training, depending on what discipline they're coming in with, as far as if it's engineering, we call it tech qualification program. It does take us a little bit of money to get those individuals trained. We have over 18 months to get them qualified to teach the degree. So our average cost probably for one person is about $25,000 over that 18-month period, depending on what course they need. Most of them who do hire have experience in education and formal training, especially from the Navy. That's they do a lot of hires like engineering program. So they already have that type of training. We can grade some of those qualifications with documentation, so it could be a little less than $25,000.
My another question is for Ms. Barry. You mentioned that you have interns coming in for RadCon. Are these students from high school or technical college or universities? My another follow-up question is you mentioned about GET. Many of us may not know GET. I know it applies to DOE, SRNS, and SRR. So could you please explain what GET is?
Depends on the individual in the class, but it normally takes better part of a day to complete. So, they start promptly first thing in the morning when we check folks in, and usually by the time they finish all the classroom material and then the testing, they're done somewhere between 1 and 2 o'clock. It just depends on how quickly people learn and take tests. So it's a requirement for everyone coming on site.
Thank you. My next question is for SRR. How many contractor employees you have at SRR, and what is your strategy to replace them with full-time employees?
Well, there's about, according to the chart, about 100 plus subcontractors, if you will. Many of those are in certain position assignments that we find the professional need to have that we're unable to source from the general market. The other aspect of it is it's an ebb and flow strategy associated, so the strategy to replace them isn't designed to go to zero, but it's to accommodate the ebb and flow of the budgeting process that we go through in a particular
Is it
fiscal
cost
year.
effective to have contractor employees compared to full-time employees?
The various departments that make use of the subcontractors will assess in terms of a make-buy analysis of those individuals, whether or not it's, to that question, its effectiveness, and depend upon the particular skill or that particular background. In many cases, utilizing the subcontractor professional augmentation services is more cost-effective than trying to recruit or retain those particular individuals.
I have one last question. You mentioned that the new young employees, they try to leave after 5 years when they have gained sufficient experience in nuclear industry. What is the strategy to keep them gainfully employed at SRR?
In terms of the liquid waste mission, the strategy to retain individuals in the engineering assignments is to I'll use engineering as an example. The engineering, the department manager has created what they call a READY program, and the READY program focuses on those individuals to go to various assignments within the liquid waste mission. Those assignments aren't just 2-month assignments. In many cases, they're an individual assigned for 18 months or 24 months in a particular facility, learning a particular system and managing that particular system. We also augment them and provide experiences with operational assignments. You saw the title there earlier as Shift Technical Engineer, where they'll actually go on and learn and operate with or help manage the shift operations at our particular facility. So the long-term aspect is exposure to assignments and career growth in that particular arena. And then as they grow professionally, they will see the advancement opportunities higher up in the hierarchical chain of our organization structure. And then last but not least, with all 4 parent companies that operate our particular site, the DOE-wide complex is really the benefit. It's an enterprise. If you think about it across the EM market as well as the NNSA market, we also try to position and indicate to our employees, you have growth and opportunity within the DOE enterprise working with us. So the long-term mission is to motivate individuals to understand what the opportunities are in front of them with the right experiences building up with the client. One last note, many times our client is looking for individuals who have significant facility experience and depth. So these aren't assignments that take 1 year or 2 years. In many cases, they're 4 to 5 years to demonstrate the mastery, gain credibility with the client, and be able to exercise those skills on behalf for the client.
Thank you.
So let's just go clockwise around. Let's go to Carlos next.
Carlos Cato, CAB. My question is for Carol Berry. Carol, you mentioned focusing on the minority serving institutions. Are there any specific programs that you currently have in place for the minority serving institutions?
I'm looking back. I think we did have one. I don't know that we do anymore. Can you help me?
Kristen Hewer, SRS. We do have an MSIP program within the National Lab
That's right.
that
That's-
partners with the minority serving institutions around the site.
Yeah, and that program has grown over time. We did have certain ones with some of the areas, but we've more focused on that one because that's really where we want to draw more minorities into those specific areas.
Now, are there any specific areas of interest that you want to emphasize? Engineering?
It's really
information
all the
technology?
areas, and that's one of the reasons why we're trying to, as I mentioned, it was very interesting to me when you looked at the applicants for E&I mechanic positions that we didn't have a really balance there with minorities. And so that's one of the reasons why we're really focusing a lot of the partnering we're doing is we have a mid-career professional group called AMP, and they've been partnered with my education outreach group to do outreach in the high schools to specifically target minorities and all students to help them to understand the opportunities that are available at the site. It's going to take us a while to see how that bears fruit. That's one of the reasons for working with Apprenticeship Carolina to try to see if that helps us. It's really all areas. When I look at our AAP every year, when I read that, there's all areas where I really need to focus on that. And to focus on any one really wouldn't do fairness. I think the laboratory really covers the technical areas for us. And we've got, we're graduating the first engineers from the USC Aiken engineering program. And so again, it's really getting out in those high schools and helping students see where we have the needs, getting those career counselors out to the site to understand the opportunities that we have out there. Dave said, it is an overwhelming, huge place that you may not understand what the needs are. And so for me, it really matters to me to see this workforce turnover, but I really am passionate about getting those local students to go to programs and to come out there and have excellent careers. So it's really all of them that we're targeting.
Dave Vavagas, CAB. Thank you very much for your presentations. Great information. I have two questions. First for Mr. Moody on slide 7. I see in FY 2018 your authorized level has dropped to 249, and it was 298 in 17, 16. It's up in the 290s in 15. I guess with the funding that DOE received this year, Savannah Riverside received this year, at or above the president's budget level, is this having an impact on the mission, not being able to hire up to the almost 300 level?
Yes, it does. It's part of the process. When I'm sure Mr. John Lopez got a presentation on budget later on today, but when we receive our budgets and different things, of course, the money is divided in different what we call line of counting of pots of money, and we look at our benefits and our rates for program direction, for budget and salary. We look at all the different things that DOE has to pay out as far as benefits, salaries into the retirement program and so forth. And so they do a calculation of that, and based on that number that we receive, then they go out and look at what FTE based on the increases of different things that happens over the course of a year, from health care policies and dental policies and so forth, life insurance. So they do a calculation of that and divide that back up, and they come out with a number of our FTE ceiling, what we can maintain and make sure we have a good payment process for the number of people. So that's how they calculate that. But we knew it was going to be, of course, a downsizing, reshaping the federal government. We knew we was going to take some losses. But what we have done is the concept that we have throughout DOE, of course, we're doing more with less, and we're doing a lot of cross-training within our ranks, having individuals from one area or organization to kind of marry up and go with another individual to do cross-training, to understand the different levels. We had a good succession plan identified that we executed very well to look at backfields in critical positions in critical areas. And then also we brought in some support service contractors in the engineering field. An individual that were with DOE before in the past came in doing some mentorship with those individuals that were new to DOE, and also helping out in some of those critical areas.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
A question, please, for SRR and SRNS. One thing we didn't hear anything about, I don't think, was the talent that you're recruiting at the senior levels. What are you doing to get the best people at those levels? Are they being coming up through the ranks, or are they organically, if you will, or are they being recruited from outside of the organization, or how does that work?
Well, there's really two components to that when I think of talent. There is the feeder pool through the ranks, where individuals who come in today as production operators or maintenance mechanics and the like can grow into supervisory positions as well as other core positions within the operational facility, and that's a long-term process. And in fact, our president project manager, Tom Foster, is embarking on this summer a succession planning identification program for those individuals to start targeting them now, developing those individuals now, first-line supervisory training, experiences with the site, and so on. So that kind of covers, in my view, those individuals. When you think about mid-career or early career, such as college grads, we focus and target the engineering schools to provide those particular individuals. When you move into mid-career individuals, we do source from the parent companies as well as senior level individuals who bring those experiences from the Hanford facility or other facilities that are alike and similar in nature and scope for what we do. And with our particular parent companies, they do have relationships at the Hanford facility, so we do have an ability to cross-pollinate, if you will, those individuals. We also have individuals that, again, it's a classic. Savannah Riverside is a major employer in the state of South Carolina. They're attracting individuals. We target, just recently we targeted a VC summer. When it went down, we were able to secure many very good people who recognize that, hey, we need to do something else at this particular scope and time. So that's the particular focus. In light of Savannah River's mission right now and the eventual transition of the contract to a new contractor, some of that activity has ebbed just ever so slightly, but the parent companies still do provide support on an as-needed basis. In fact, recently we've replaced our chief engineering manager with an individual from the AECOM who previously ran the WIP site and had it restarted. So we do bring in those experiences to help the site.
Similar answer, just very quickly, focusing on the higher level areas, and I can think of several examples here in the last 6 months. We've had individuals who started at the site as right out of school as an engineer who have been placed in very high level positions, so that's important to do because people want to see that happen, that could happen to them. We've also do source from some of our parents also, probably a little less so than SRR does, just less experience in a nuclear facility, but we still are able to do that. And we also do large-scale hiring efforts like we did just recently to replace our lab director. So a little of both.
Thank you.
Tom French, Cab. And you guys are having a very exciting time. I know this is really great, challenging, but very great. And I have sort of a very big, broad brush question for all three of you. Since you're able to now hire a lot of people, which is really good, is your diversity profile improving as you're able to do this?
It is improving, but not to the rate that I'm happy with, and so that's the reason for some of these programs that I've talked about. That's really why when I look ahead, specifically to the end of our contract, when that might be, is my focus is really on getting that word out, is we don't have difficulty. I just put, I have 2 fairly entry-level positions in my area, human resources. I had over 400 applicants for both of those positions, and over 200 were qualified. I mean, my folks actually made my numbers look bad in terms of the amount of time it takes to hire. So you're right, it is great times, but then it's a matter of focusing on that. So really, we pay a lot of attention to that. We do matrices for each of the positions, which really shows all of those things and evaluates. So our EEO department is hand in glove with the staffing department. So, we're improving, and I'm impatient about improvement, but I like seeing that effort. But again, that's why the focus is on this education outreach, not just to reach the students, but to reach the teachers and the career counselors, so we can get individuals interested in knowing they can have a successful career at the site.
Just to follow similar, one of the things that I think from a targeting perspective, we do review our affirmative action plan on an annual basis. So that handles kind of the representative statistics of what you're supposed to have in terms of the population and the like. However, I think our target for liquid waste mission is that Tom, the president project manager, is focused on bringing more females, more diversity into the workforce in key hiring positions and recruitment positions. And the reason why is that historically they tend to be more open in terms of hiring others of diversity nature. So our focus and target this summer is we look at seeding females into supervisory positions and the like. So we're going to identify and target that. So we have work to do, but generally pretty pleased with where we are there.
Just real quickly for me, for DOE, yes, we do see a lot of number of applicants that apply for our positions. We do have a good reputation. I like to thank the senior management team there and all the supervisors. We hire a lot of people and bring them in, and they get qualified. And one of the biggest challenges for me and for my management team is that they get hired by other organizations, especially our sister agency, NNSA, for higher level positions, and also DOE headquarters. So we do have a pool of applicants that we do hire from, and we are constrained by certain OPM and federal regulation policies on how we can pay individual coming in first time or in the federal agency. But we do have a good pool of applicants. Thank you.
Doug?
Doug Howard, Cap. Lee, I think most of my questions will pertain to you. And the first one is the personnel that you get from the naval recruiting program that you have. Are they, since most of them are cleared already, do they still have to be cleared to work at the site?
So they still have to go through a clearance process. However, as you said, most of the Navy individuals have top secret clearance. So what we do a reciprocal type clearance, and we go through the process and submit it through OPM, and their clearance come back a lot quicker than anyone that do not have a clearance. It normally takes about 12 to 16 months to receive a clearance back. For those individuals, it takes about 4 to 6 months. So it's a lot easier and quicker for those to get their clearance back. Yes.
The other question I have, the numbers that you had up there for the losses through retirement and other means, do those also include numbers for medical losses or medical retirement?
Yes, they do. Fortunately, we only had one significant medical loss in the last 2 years. Individual passed away, but yes, those numbers include that as well.
Okay, and then the final question is, do you all get transfers from other sites that come in and for job replacements?
Yes, we do. Matter of fact, we do. We look at, because DOE is downsizing as a whole, we look at other individual agencies that are downsizing or cutting, and we post our jobs, and our jobs are sent to them for them to either apply or request a transfer through that process.
So when they transfer in like that, does that count as a new hire?
It does count for Savannah River as a new hire, but the number for DOE, usually that FTE is either absorbed by us or given to us.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, let's come down this way. Eleanor?
Eleanor Hobson, Cab. Ms. Barry, I am always very interested in the schools, and I've noticed that your outreach efforts are just great through SRS and DOE, and the teachers look forward to it. I'm just asking that Richmond County perhaps receive more information than they have because of new teachers, new employees who are not aware of the many grant opportunities and the various opportunities that come through your programs. And the STEM awareness is just wonderful. We look forward to Engineering Week every week in the Richmond County Schools. So please think of Richmond County and send more information.
I'll have my guys do that. I know that we do, so maybe the wrong person has the information. But I'll
Perhaps.
talk to Francine Burrows, who's my manager in that area. She actually
Yes.
lives there, so we'll do a little more focused outreach and try to get more participation. I
Yes.
appreciate that.
Contact someone at BOE.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Bobby.
Bobby Williams, Cab.
Bobby.
My first question is to Mr. Holland. You mentioned about the 4.5 shift. What is that?
Probably shouldn't talk in lingo. A little history lesson, if you go back to the early 2000s, Savannah Riverside many times ran on what they called a 5 shift, and that allowed for training to occur 1 full week on every 4-week rotation. And in the mid-2000s, in an effort to conserve cost, the operations groups moved to a 4 shift, just straight, and did training within the scheduled shifts at that rotation. 4.5 allows a slight growth in the population of the shifts to allow people to go take training time, yet be relieved from their duties. So the staffing levels are set or optimized just to operate the facility, sometimes with regard to training. So training took a little bit of a back seat, but now with the 4.5 shift, we'll be able to move operators and other individuals to get the necessary training that they need, largely as a result of the expansion of activities with Saltstone, SWPF integration, and the like for the mission. So it's just a name to add more individuals to the shift and not go back to a full 5-week rotation for training.
Okay. And my next question is for Ms. Barry. You recruit school-to-work students and interns. What's the retention rate on those school-to-work and interns, and how are they recruited?
Well, we advertise for those, but we do outreach at the local schools, at the local universities to make them aware of our programs. But we post those jobs through our system and they're applied to. We do have returning students, and we have increased the number of folks that we are hiring through our intern program. So that's how we get the word out. We advertise those jobs now. We do it in January. We're trying to get ahead of that curve because most companies usually go more in February. That's where we used to advertise, and we felt like we were missing out on some of the top candidates. It's a very competitive, posting process. But
And what grade in high school can students start to work?
For our intern program is college level, so it starts with college level.
The school to work, though, isn't that in high school?
School to work, we have very minimal high school students in our programs. We're just going to begin looking at that with this apprentice program. We used to, but we eliminated that program during certain periods when we were downsizing so much. It wasn't a good thing to have a high school student in the mix, just as our intern program really had gone much smaller during those times. So this is really renewing that. So the intern program is specifically college.
Okay. And how long does it take to get an employee cleared from the time they're hired into?
It depends on the employee. Like, that's one of the reasons why, as mentioned by Lee, that naval recruiting, those folks were able to get their clearance much more quickly. The time has reduced significantly, but it's still a fairly long period of time. For a number of our jobs, we're able to do the training, the on-site training and qualification during the time they're waiting for the clearance. But, the times have reduced, but it does tend to take about anywhere from 10 to 18 months, and it can be longer depending on how many locations a person's lived in.
And with the operators, do all of them have to have be qualified in the work keys?
All our non-exempt employees, we require work keys now. That's one of the ways with our downsizing in my own organization. We used to do just a lot of testing, and it required a number of individuals, and so we rely on that work keys. A lot of people take it. I know they are able to get it at Aiken Tech, and they offer it 6 days a week, but we require it for every one of our non-exempt positions.
And that's admin too?
Admin, no.
Okay. All right, thank you.
let's see, Narendra, I see you got your card up, but I'm going to skip down to Betty first because we've heard from you. We'll come back to you in a bit, though, okay? So, Betty.
Thank you, Betty Cook Cab. I would just like to say the presentation from all three of you is wonderful, and you certainly have me sold on the job. But on the flip side of that, I have two grandsons that just graduated from Clemson University as engineers, and they both came out with job offers and jobs, one in Charleston, one in Greenville. But to my knowledge, they did not attend your job fair, and I'm just wondering what we do to recruit these young people. I know you're saying you do job fair and Clemson's on the list, but I'm just wondering, you know, what can interest the kids. I'm certainly sold. Thank you. You did a wonderful job.
Thanks, Betty. Gil?
Well, Betty, first of all, they recruit for Florida State. They don't need Clemson. So with that, hey, I'm really excited. Thank you all for sharing the numbers with the ages coming down. That really appreciate that, and I'd like to see that. But I have two questions, and kind of for everybody. With Cyber Command bringing in so many people into the CSRA, do you believe that's opening up a new stream of possible employees? And are we looking at that as a potential hiring?
It does. It makes it more competitive. You know, hiring in that IT area was already competitive, and so that has made it more competitive, just to be very honest. But, you know, it's interesting who's attracted to work in different environments. So that's why you have to really be relentless. That's one area where we are trying to reduce the number of staff aug employees that we've had in our IT department and hire full service, and things are going really well with that. So.
Yes, for us, we're thrilled about it. Matter of fact, we've spoken to them at the Fort Gordon about them bringing the command there. We know some people there already, and we have did some hiring from those individuals that was IT or cyber that was on site. So we're very thrilled about it and happy as we continue to grow our cyber command positions there at Savannah River. We'll be looking for those individuals that will be retired or those individuals that want to stay in the area and apply for jobs.
For the liquid waste contract, we're very, very small in IT or cybersecurity services. We procure our services through the primary M&O contractor. But just in general, anytime there's more competition, that just means there's more talent and more opportunities for individuals in the area. So it's a good thing, even though albeit more competitive.
Well, great. And then the last question really is probably more for the contractors. Well, it is. With contracts ending and going up for bid, how does that affect your recruiting, especially as you get closer? And I know SR, you're in a different situation, but how does that affect recruiting?
What we find, as long as we explain what the mission is and the long-term opportunity for individuals, the contract change is largely high level, so not a detriment. You acknowledge it, but not a detriment, because what you've got is the mission, and you're able to talk about the mission that's going to last for a number of years and the opportunities for these individuals to grow. So it's not a negative, so to speak, if I were looking at it that way.
So millennials and I'm a Gen X, but in those going after me, they're accepting that it's just a check change.
Well, I may rephrase the term check change. They're always mindful.
My term. Sorry.
Right. They're always mindful of who they like to see who's the outfit running the LLC, if you will, or the entity. But by and large, they understand that the mission is what matters, and they're focused on that particular mission, and you have a team there that's dedicated to that cause. So they're aware of it, but it's not a determiner necessarily when we're recruiting them, because as we recruit them, we're selling the liquid waste mission and the company that operates it. And even in today's environment, we're acknowledging that we're in a state of change with our current contract. So we put it up on the table right away, and largely it gets addressed, and then we move on.
So it's definitely more imminent for SRR, but one of the things we've already started doing is talking about that. There's always an impact. I said when I got this position, I never wanted to have another workforce restructuring. Well, the negative of that is, for somebody like myself who's worked out there 30 years, I've been through a lot of highs and lows, and I think I built up a lot of resilience, whether I wanted to or not, and went through contract changes. Well, I think it's still helpful to have people like myself and others work out there to say, you'll still have a job, things will be okay. We're already looking at talking about this. My folks are putting together a change management course that's very specific to this type of change, and we're also talking about it in light of so that we can retain the safety status that we have, because distraction can lead to events. So it's something we're already talking about. You just have to talk about it constantly. I think that because there have been so many changes, we've had a number of change in presidents, for example, and I think when I look at individuals who we've hired since 14 and on, they're used to some of those kinds of changes, and so it's putting it in context so they understand you will still have work to do, there's still a position, and you have to focus on your career and not the individuals who you may be working for. So it's just like Dave says, it's something you put out on the table and talk about. It's a challenge, but we'll try to get through that. I don't think it'll be an issue.
So we're really starting to push into the next presenter's time, but Narinder, if you can make it really quick, and if our presenters can make a quick response, I think that we have time to wrap up with you.
Thank you. My question is about science fair. I see it's not very popular what it used to be in Columbia County, and I think since the demise of WSRC, the science fair and engineering week has really faded away in Columbia County. How can we revive it so that we can continue science fairs in elementary and middle schools in Columbia County?
I don't know how to speak to that. The schools make a decision whether or not they create that as an assignment or a participation. And we still have a number of students that participate in the CSRA Science Fair. So I think that's probably something specific to the schools. I can ask my team to do a little more outreach to make sure they understand that that's available. But sometimes Columbia County does not participate as much as others in some of these areas.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Jim, I think you had a note.
Yeah, Jim Folk, DOE. I just really want to take the opportunity here. Appreciate Dave bringing up the topic of the 4.5 shift training. And the reason I just want to make a special note of that, it's more than just simple training, okay? With the 4.5 shift, it's really a major site commitment in our conduct of operations program. One of the things we identified was that we felt the individuals, shift managers, control room managers, site technical engineers, really were not having the opportunity to really work together in a training atmosphere. So one of the things we were able to do with this 4.5 shift training is to be able to really pick up an entire crew. So, training you think of reading a book or doing whatever, but with 4.5 shift training, what we're able to do is pick up that entire crew, take them over to a simulator, and actually run them through real-life scenarios that they may face, and it really enhances the opportunity to work as a team. So I didn't want that to get away from us. It is more than, I'll say, just HR and just training. That's a real connection back to ConOps. And just to throw one more number at you, when you go through that process, basically before we started that training initiative, an average individual would get about 75 hours worth of training. By going to the 4.5 shift, those people will get about 235 hours of training per year. And again, it's as an entity and as a unit. So we're really looking forward to that. And it'll take about a year to get all that fully up and running to hire all those individuals, but it's a major cost commitment and a major commitment for our improvements in our conduct of ops program. So I just want to take the opportunity to add that in. Thanks.
Okay, great. So up next we have Brian Hennessy, who's going to give you the update on the final FFA, Appendix C.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, board members, guests. Welcome to Savannah. This is my annual update on the final approved Appendix E of the Federal Facility Agreement, which is, of course, our out-year cleanup milestones, enforceable milestones. I am giving you this presentation in response to an old CAB recommendation for requesting such information, and it's also on the Facility Disposition and Site Remediation Committee's annual work plan. First, a little background about the Federal Facility Agreement. It is a legally binding agreement among DOE, the EPA Region 4, and South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. And this will be a good time to mention that for DOE Savannah River, I am the program manager for coordinating activities under the Federal Facility Agreement, and I have a counterpart in EPA Region 4, who is John Richards, who is at the table, and at South Carolina DHEC, it is Susan Fulmer, who's seated next to John. So the FFA contains the administrative requirements for our work, enforceable schedules for getting it done, which is what I'll specifically start talking about in a couple of minutes, and milestones for the things we do and the documents that we submit to facilitate them. The Federal Facility Agreement lists the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, which is RCRA, and Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, which is CERCLA. It lists all the release sites that we are required to identify under those statutes, and other potential releases that we have to address through the cleanup process described in the FFA, and also how we would address any new releases or any old releases that we find. It includes requirements, the FFA that is, also includes requirements for removing from service or closing some of our liquid waste tanks. And it also spells out the authorities and responsibilities of DOE, EPA, and South Carolina DHEC, and gives procedures for resolving disputes. Now, the FFA has about 50 pages of text, and then it's the next 60 or 70 pages are appendices that serve various purposes. Appendix E lists the milestones for getting our work done. It comes in 3 parts called E1, E2, and E3. E1 has the first enforceable year in it, or the first enforceable out year, I should say. In this case, it's 2019, fiscal year 2019. E2 has the milestones for the second out year, fiscal year 2020. And E3 has the milestones for the entire life cycle. We update Appendix E annually, submit it to the state and EPA for approval in November. And I think that's pretty easy to follow, huh? E1, E2, E3. Any questions on that? Okay. So, the next couple of slides are going to describe what the milestones are. Many of them are different types of documents because before we can clean something up, we have to investigate it to know what's there, to know how big it is, to decide how we're going to clean it up. And so there's some field work that goes into that. There's a work plan for that field work, which is the first milestone, a remedial investigation work plan, sort of the sampling plan and the methodology for doing the investigation. After we collect that data and understand it, we issue a remedial investigation report with a baseline risk assessment that describes the problem and the risk that that problem poses to human health and the environment. Following that, there's a feasibility study, which is sort of a comparison of alternatives for the cleanup, if one is necessary, followed by a proposed plan, which is the cleanup alternative preferred by DOE, South Carolina DHEC, and EPA for the unit or the release. And that is the document that you will see mentioned in an environmental bulletin as being available for your review and comment. Normally, most of them have a 45-day public review and comment period. After the proposed plan has been reviewed, public comments have been considered, the three agencies issue a record of decision, which commits us to the cleanup described in that ROD. And under the law, under CERCLA, that cleanup has to begin within 15 months from the issuance of that record of decision. Next, we have to submit a remedial action implementation plan. That's shortly after the record of decision, and that describes what we're going to do, how we're going to do it in detail. Of course, the proposed plan and the record of decision wouldn't go into a lot of detail, design and things like that. So that is a document that comes out after the record of decision. Design summary talks about the permitting that's going to be required, what we're going to build, where we're going to build it, what kind of maintenance it will require, etc. If the remedy is not going to achieve cleanup to a unrestricted or residential use level, then there will also be a land use control implementation plan that describes how the department is going to control the use of that property so that unintended uses such as residential will not occur in the future. Now everything that I just described is part of what we call the remedial process. And there's another process that we can use for actions normally of a smaller scale and of a fairly straightforward nature called the removal process. And normally we would submit a document with a long name, removal site evaluation report / engineering evaluation / cost analysis. The acronym for this is an ECA. We just go by the engineering evaluation cost analysis, call it an ECA, and it describes the problem that we're going to address through the removal action. And a couple of alternatives for getting that job done, and the preferred or the intended method for doing that cleanup. And that one also goes to the public for a 30-day public comment period. So not everything that we do involves writing paper. Sometimes we are in the field working, either investigating or cleaning up. And so some of the milestones you'll see in Appendix E are referred to as field starts, and that refers to the start of this investigation at the very beginning of the process of understanding the hazard that a waste unit poses. So a field start is the beginning of the investigation. Typically it's taking samples, building wells, after that remedial investigation work plan has been approved. And you will also see remedial action starts. After a record of decision has been issued and an implementation plan has been approved, this remedial action start happens. And as I mentioned before, within 15 months of the issuance of a record of decision, this action has to get started. That's in the law. There are also some milestones for our liquid waste tanks. Two types. They are called complete bulk waste removal efforts, and that is completing the efforts to get most of the waste out of a tank. It doesn't leave them pristine or with just a heel, but it is removing normally it's hundreds of thousands of gallons of waste that's in there. And so when only the hardest part is left, we consider the bulk waste removal to be complete. And then there's the complete operational closure, which happens after the three parties have agreed that all the waste that can be removed from this tank has been removed. And it is then isolated from the rest of the liquid waste system, filled with grout, and left in the condition that now happily 8 of our liquid waste tanks are in, which is sitting there with the risk, very, very, very low, practically eliminated. So, in case you memorized my presentation last year, I'll just tell you what the changes are from last year. A couple of new milestones. We are undertaking an action out at near the C reactor in the C area where the groundwater is contaminated with some tritium and some volatile organic compounds from reactor operations and maintenance operations out there for decades. A removal action has been proposed to remediate some TCE, which is a volatile organic that's in the groundwater. And so this action will be consistent with whatever we do in the final action for C area groundwater. And the final action for the C area groundwater has been delayed. So we're going to take this near-term action to get rid of all the TCE that we can. And the, let's see, the final ROD. The ROD date was postponed from 2020 to 2027 to give this removal action a chance to, or time to improve groundwater conditions out there, to destroy a lot of that TCE. Another one near the P reactor, there's a large groundwater plume of tritium and volatile organics. Same type of thing, same disposal practices went on at virtually all the 5 reactors. But here we have a TCE and PCE plume in groundwater. And so this removal action is going to involve the construction of an underground permeable reactive wall that the groundwater will pass through on its way toward the Steel Creek. And there will be very, very tiny particles of zero valent iron in that barrier that will react with volatile organics and destroy them, break them down into their most elemental components. So in order to do that, that's going to, an action memorandum will be coming out for that in the next couple of months. The ECA has already been out for public review. Let's see. And the final action for P groundwater, that ROD was postponed from 2020 to 2031 to allow this permeable reactive barrier to demonstrate its effectiveness. We think it's going to be extremely high, 95% destruction or better of all the volatile organics that pass through this medium. And during those 11 years, we will have done away with a lot of TCE, and also about nearly half of the tritium that's in the groundwater out there will have gone away from just the pure radioactive decay of tritium. Half-life is about 13 years. Is that right, John? 12.3 to be exact. Thank you. There are also going to be a couple of actions in the D area, near the old D area powerhouse, where, as you might know, we are closing 2 large ash basins, a coal pile runoff basin, and an ash landfill. That project is in the home stretch now, probably in the last 5 or 6 months before it's complete. But anyway, the coal pile runoff basin that received runoff from the giant coal pile that sat out there next to the powerhouse, the runoff that went into that basin for 50 or 60 years was extremely low pH water, having infiltrated through that coal and produced essentially sulfuric acid on its way through that coal. So we had a very low pH basin, large I'd say 3 or 4 acre basin. And also the coal pile itself was the leachate that went through the coal and into the soil beneath it became very low pH or acidic. And so the groundwater out there in the vicinity of the powerhouse is got a very low pH and it's got metals in it, dissolved metals as a result. And so a couple of actions are going to address those low pH groundwater conditions. We're working on those documents right now. Oops, sorry. An ECA is going to come out for one of them in July and the other in September of this year. So you'll be, check your mail, you'll be getting environmental bulletins announcing availability of some D area groundwater or a D area groundwater ECA. Let's see, which one of these? The first one, the dates are not going to change, but this removal action is actually going to be done as a what we call a treatability study. The action is going to be the same thing that we had conceived of, but it's going to be conducted as a treatability study so we can prove this principle maybe for longer term or larger scale application at D area and at other areas of the site. So timing will be the same, but instead of a removal action, it's going to be a treatability study. Okay, if you picked up handouts out on the table, hopefully you got one of the large ones here. The 11 by 17 is this, which may be more than one page. Yes, it is. But it's just one page for us who have the paper. And this is just, you should actually focus on the left-hand half of this, which is the nearer term in terms of time. And let's see. This just shows you what projects we will be working on in one manner or another over the next 10 years, but focusing on the near term, we are, the first line the first line is called IOUs, which stands for Integrator Operable Units, which are our 5 sites, major site streams and their floodplains and the sediment and the plants and animals that inhabit that environment. And so we are continuously monitoring all of them, and we issue reports on one or another every few years. There's always a report going out or another phase of an investigation starting. But the second line I'd like you to focus on is lower 3 runs, which, as you know, is that stream system that we don't have a big site map here, and I didn't draw a picture, but you know, the long thin tail that kind of comes out the lower right-hand part of the site and makes its way down through Allendale County and to the river. The lower 3 runs stream system, we're going to finish that up. And of course that received discharges from the P reactor and the R reactor through a canal system and some little pre-cooler ponds. The main feature of the lower 3 run system, however, that you can see when you fly over is Parr Pond. That is part of the lower 3 run system. So we have investigated those canals, those pre-cooler ponds, Parr Pond, and we're working on the feasibility study right now. We have the problems defined. We broke that large system up into 9 exposure areas, and we have a reasonable suite of alternatives identified for each of those 9. And as you can see, the record of decision, which is what ROD means, forgive me for saying that every now and then, the ROD will be issued in June of 20, and then it looks like 15 months after that, the remedial action will start. And this line here is just pure, it was a guess about how long we'll be working. Nothing definitive there. Okay, next line, C area groundwater, and the one below it, P area groundwater. Those are the two removal actions that I spoke about a minute ago. Under that, you have the DAOU, second EA, which means the D area, operable unit, again, down there by the river where the powerhouse, the big powerhouse is. Second early action, and this will simply be a record of decision for those ash units that we're closing now. The record of decision announcing that they're done and that land use controls will be needed. GOSB stands for G area oil seepage basin, just a little wastewater basin at the lower end of the N area or the central shops part of the site. The record of decision from that will be issued at the end of 19. Okay, the next two lines, DAGW, removal action, and the DACSA. DAGW is D area groundwater, and DACSA is the D area coal storage area. So those are those two actions in D area to address low pH conditions that I talked about a minute ago. So those ECAs will come out this year, and those actions will get underway in 2020. Am I doing okay on time? Or I need to speed up? Okay, thank you. Next line, DAGW. This is the D area groundwater, the entire groundwater operable unit down at D area. And this is just a normal, this long red line is just a normal process of investigating, which will involve maybe installing new monitoring wells, gathering and interpreting data, and deciding on what, if any, groundwater problems or exceedances of regulatory standards down there need response action by DOE, and then what those actions will be. That investigation will start in 2020. The ROD will be issued in 23, and the remedial action will start at the end of 24, or in September of 24. Okay. Let's see. There's really nothing else on here that's going to start in the next 2 years. Then I don't want to get down into a lot of detail. So I'll move on from this chart. I guess we should take questions at the end. All right. So, and there's a lot of small type on this. This is sort of, it's not every milestone that's in the Appendix E for 19 and 20, but it looks like it's a lot of them. The first one, 5-year remedy review report. We have a lot of remedies that we have selected since 1993. I think we're up to probably 65 or so, and we have to review them every 5 years to verify and to demonstrate to the EPA and the state that they're still effective. And so we split those 65 up into 5 groups based on remedy type, so that we could do one 5-year remedy review every year, sort of phase them so that we weren't doing a massive review that's going to get larger and larger every 5 years. We broke them into manageable size, and so every year there's one group of those units that's being reviewed. So the first one is the last of the 5th 5-year remedy reviews, and then the next group will start, or they'll all start again. The 6th cycle will start in 2018. D area operable unit, this again is the ROD and that was on the timeline chart a minute ago. D area groundwater, this was also on the chart. G oil seepage basin, this was on the timeline as well. Lower 3 runs we talked about. And couple of liquid waste tank milestones at the very end of fiscal year 2019. So decision documents, the reason that I highlight these is because these will be available for your review at some point, for the public's review. Or excuse me, I'm sorry, these have already been through public review. The first one, the C area ECA public comment period ended in mid-April, and P area groundwater ECA, that comment period ended last week. So in summary, the entire Appendix E, in fact, the entire FFA is available for the public on the site's external website, which is srs.gov, as you know, and under programs, there's a soil and groundwater button under programs where you can access the FFA, all of our records of decision, a lot of program documents. But of course, for today, the subject is Appendix E, so the new Appendix E is there for your inspection. Any questions for me?
Okay, we'll start with Don.
Dawn Gillis, Cab. Thank you, Brian. It's a good presentation. I just wanted to note, I really like this chart. I'm a picture person, and this really sets everything.
This?
This.
Okay.
Yeah, this thing.
Okay.
So it gives a better, one of the things that we've talked about in the past is what is all the work, and it all is in Appendix E, but and in getting the presentations once a year, it's kind of hard to keep track sometimes. This
Right.
is really good. It puts it all in one place. You can see it all at one time.
Right.
There are a couple of comments on it. Is you got all the acronyms below, except for RSER and ECA. So I just need to put that acronym on there. I knew what ECA stood for, but I didn't know what RSER was at the time.
Okay.
The other thing is there a rhyme or reason to the colors? Or is it just to separate the lines? Okay, just wanted to know if if the red was something that had to be done now, or or something like that. So.
No, it's just what appealed to me.
Okay.
From the
All right, just wanted to make sure
Crayola box.
that there wasn't a
that's how it
color
turned
code
out.
to it. Okay, that's good, but I just wanted to say that I really like this chart. Thank you.
Let's skip over here to Mary.
Mary Weber Cab. Thank you for the presentation, and like Dawn just said, this chart's really helpful. I have a question about, in the blue, the sea area groundwater.
Yes, ma'am.
What accounts for the 7-year gap between 2020 and 2027?
You mean the delay in the rod?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in between, we decided that we didn't want to issue a final rod because there's tritium contamination in that groundwater that there really is no practical, doable response action for that wouldn't be monumental in cost. So we took an action on what we can address, which is the TCE. And in the meantime, because this is not causing any terrible environmental problem, we just put it out to a point in the program where, there's other work in the meantime, just landed it in a place where we would be ready to, and we would have the resources available to come back again for that final decision. And also, it would give this action that we're going to take now time to work and time to have its effect on conditions out there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Brian?
Brian Chemsat, Cab. You talked about the 15 months from the record of decision. Is that to start your remedial action implementation plan or for actual work activities in the field?
That's for the remedy to get started, construction.
Okay.
Yeah, so implementation plan has to happen like shortly after the ROD get approved, questions answered and all that, and that has to be approved to green light the start of the action. But it's the action that has to start in 15 months.
Let's come back around. Narinder?
Narinder Malik, CAB. At what stage you start preparing ECA, and when you prepare ECA, you have the RIF in hand, the cost of completing the job is very close to what you have calculated in ECA, that this is what is going to cost us?
Yes, as you know, the ECA has an estimate in it for each of the alternatives, and the estimate is, in the guidance, it says that the estimate has to be within plus 50% or minus 30%, so it's a pretty good range, because at the time that you write the ECA, you have an idea about the technology, but you don't have a scope of work issued to a potential vendor. You don't know what it's going to cost, but you have an idea. So in the ECA, there is let's just call it a conservative estimate of the cost for each alternative.
But don't we have a scope of work when we prepare RIFS?
A scope of work?
Yeah, for the project.
Yes, for an RI, the scope of work is in the RI work plan. A feasibility study is there's not any physical work associated with that unless we were going to do a treatability study or demonstrate some new technology. But for an RI, the scope of work is the RI work plan. This says where we're going to sample, what methods we're going to use for sampling and analysis. Yes.
And at what stage you apply for ROD to EP and DHEC after completing RIFS?
Apply for what, sir?
ROD, record of decision.
Oh, that's after the feasibility study has been approved, and then we, the three parties, evaluate the alternatives and select the preferred one. And so that's what comes out in the proposed plan, which goes out to the public for comment. And then after those comments are considered, then a ROD is issued. Anything else?
Charles Hilton, CAB. Mr. Hennessy, thank you for this presentation. This is the first time that I've seen this. I'm new. And as I struggle flipping pages with the acronyms and trying to keep up with this, the thing that concerns me is on slides 8 and 9, I wish you'd clarify it for me at least, on C area groundwater and P area groundwater, where we have both VOCs as well as tritium.
Yes, sir.
Remedial action started, appears that it was planned for 2021 and it's now been moved back to 2032. This is on P. I'm a little concerned. We have an 11-year gap. What are we saying here? Are we actually delaying any action on cleanup for 11 years?
No, sir.
That's where I'm missing with the acronyms, and
Okay.
I apologize for that.
A removal action has been proposed to address the chlorinated VOCs. That's the TCE and tetrachloroethylene. So if you look on the chart here, let's see what it says about P area groundwater on the 4th line. The removal action is going to start in April of 19. So a year from now, we're going to start constructing at P area an underground permeable reactive barrier that's going to intercept the groundwater that's flowing from the source area, which was the reactor, down gradient toward the Steel Creek. And it's where there's a place where the plume gets very narrow, and that's where we're going to build the permeable reactive barrier. And where the water passes through this barrier, it's going to destroy nominally 95% of the TCE contamination. So that barrier will be treating groundwater from the time that we install it to the time we make the next decision. And even then, the barrier will still be there. It'll still be treating the contaminated groundwater passing through it. We will just do another decision in, when was that? We'll do another decision in May of 2031 to address how conditions are after 10 or 11 years of the operation of this barrier. So there'll be lower concentrations of volatile organics in the groundwater then, and lower concentrations of tritium. But the point here is we're going to do this thing that can be done relatively quickly and straightforwardly, that's going to be very efficient in terms of remediating TCE and PCE in the groundwater. So that's what's going to be happening until during that 11-year gap.
Thank you for that answer. I feel much better.
Okay. Welcome.
Do we have any other questions from the board? Gil?
Excuse me, Gil Allens with CAP. Do you currently have, I mean, I know we're looking out into future years, do we currently have the budgeting set up to be able to do these projects?
That's always the challenge. You know how the budget system works here. We don't budget now for 2032. I don't even think we have a budget for 2020. So we know what we have this year. We're pretty sure what we have in 2019. Beyond that, this puts a stake in the ground about what we need going forward. And the people that decide on budgets are aware of what we need, what commitments we've made, what objectives we have. And this is one of the inputs into the SRS and EM budget process. So yeah, but beyond 2019, no, we don't have budgets in place for this or anything else.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to say.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Robert?
Robert Smith, CAB. Just going back to Gil's conversation of yesterday and something you just said. You said you put a stake in the ground in terms of what the budget needs to be in 2032. And Gil is saying that we as the CAB need to be putting more emphasis on budget numbers. Will those numbers be identified to the CAB so that we can look at today, tomorrow, 10 years from now, and start putting together our recommendations to DOE for budget funding going forward?
I wish I could answer that. I think that would be a grand idea, but that may not be how it works. John Lopez is going to.
John Lopez, DOE. Unfortunately, all future year budgets are embargoed information, so we can only talk about what's released by the president. And the last budget he released was with the fiscal year 19 budget. We're working on fiscal year 20 budget. We cannot talk about that until the president actually releases it in February. But I can assure you, as we go through our budget projections and our budget planning, we are identifying what the site's needs are to address all of our agreements that we've signed up with the regulators.
Thank you.
Before, John, I don't know if you're the person or Avery, but before the next committee meeting, can we get estimated costs for the projects?
Which ones?
The next 5 years. The things that are going to start in the next 5 years, if you want me to be arbitrary.
We'll take a note for that and see what we
Yeah,
can.
and so, I mean, that's something I think would be a good discussion at committee for FDSR.
Any other questions from the board? Thanks, Brian.
Very welcome.
Thank you. So it's 11:15, and we're scheduled to take lunch at 11:30. We can fill this time for the next 15 minutes, or I can let you go now as long as you promise to be back by 1.
We're leaving.
Gil says we're gone. 1 o'clock, folks, 1 o'clock. Thank you.